Let's talk about your money. Not just the numbers in your bank account, but how it actually feels to try and make it work in today's world. You get your paycheck, feel good for a second, maybe even allow yourself a little hope that this time, things will be different. Then reality hits. Rent, loans, groceries that cost as much as a weekend getaway. Suddenly that paycheck seems to vanish into thin air, eaten up by bills before you can even enjoy it. You work hard, maybe have a good job, but it feels like you're sprinting on a treadmill while your parents cruise through life with paychecks that actually covered things. They seem to have more breathing room, more chances to save, to buy a home, to plan for the future. This isn't just a feeling, it's backed by cold, hard stats. The numbers show that today's dollar doesn't stretch nearly as far as it used to. The old promise was simple: work hard, get educated, and you'll do better than your parents. That was the deal for generations. But for millennials, that deal has expired. The rules changed, and nobody told us until we were already playing the game. Your paycheck might look bigger than your dad's did, but it buys you less. The numbers on the check have gone up, but what you can actually afford has shrunk. The purchasing power of your money has been hollowed out. Every dollar is stretched thinner, and it feels like you're always one step behind. Salaries go up a little, but the cost of living goes up even more. Groceries, rent, healthcare, and education all cost more than ever before. It's a pay cut disguised as a raise. You're working just as hard but getting less in return. The game has changed, and the rules are stacked against anyone born after 1980. Opportunities that once seemed guaranteed now feel out of reach. If you're wondering why you can't afford what your parents had, despite working just as hard, you're not crazy. The world really is different now. You're not a failure. You're playing a different, much harder game. The challenges you face are real, and they're not your fault. The goalposts haven't just moved, they've been sold for scrap. The finish line keeps shifting further away. Understanding how we got here is the first step to demanding a fairer system. And together, we can start to push for the changes we deserve. Let's break down the difference between nominal wages, the number on your paycheck, versus what that money can actually do for you in the real world. It's easy to see a bigger number and feel like you're moving up, but the reality is more complicated. Real wages are what your paycheck is truly worth after inflation chips away at its value. It's the difference between being able to fill your grocery cart or having to put things back on the shelf. Since 2000, average wages have gone up on paper, but after inflation, real wages have barely budged. Just 10% growth over 24 years. That means your paycheck might look bigger, but it doesn't stretch any further. That's less than 0.5% per year, so little it's almost invisible in your day-to-day life. You get more growth from a neglected houseplant. At least the plant might surprise you with a new leaf now and then. Meanwhile, corporate profits and the stock market have soared to record highs, making investors and executives richer than ever, but workers' paychecks haven't kept up. Productivity is up, people are working harder and smarter, but compensation is stuck in the slow lane. It's like you baked a cake. Your boss took almost all of it and left you crumbs. The bigger the cake gets, the smaller your slice seems to be. This isn't an accident. It's the result of decades of policy choices that favor capital over labor, shifting the balance of power and wealth. So when you get a 3% raise but inflation is also 3%, you're just treading water. Your money buys the same, or sometimes even less, than before. If inflation is higher, you're actually losing ground, even if your paycheck technically goes up. Your salary is a leaky bucket in a storm of rising costs. No matter how fast you try to fill it, the leaks just get bigger. This disconnect is why so many millennials and younger generations feel like they're running in place, financially exhausted and unable to get ahead no matter how hard they work. The system isn't broken for everyone, just for those who work for a living. For the wealthy, it's working exactly as designed. And that's the heart of the crisis, a growing gap between what workers give and what they get in return. If stagnant wages are the fire that's burning through the dreams of a generation, then housing, healthcare, and higher education are the gasoline, fueling a crisis that touches every part of life for millennials and Gen Z. These aren't luxuries, they're the basics of a stable life, the foundation every generation before took for granted, but now, their costs have exploded, putting them out of reach for millions. Let's start with housing. Since 2000, median home prices have jumped over 150% after inflation, while wages have barely budged. The dream of homeownership is slipping away. In the 1980s, a home cost about 3 times the median income, something a typical family could realistically save for. Now, it's 7, 8, or even 10 times that in many cities, especially in places with good jobs and schools. Down payments alone are bigger than what your parents or grandparents paid for their entire house. For many, renting is the only option, but even rents are skyrocketing. Next, higher education. College costs have more than doubled since 2000, even after inflation. A degree is supposed to open doors, but now it often comes with a lifetime of debt. Student debt is now over $1.7 trillion, leaving millennials and Gen Z starting their adult lives deep in the hole, delaying milestones like buying a home or starting a family. It's a debt for diploma system that stunts financial growth before it even begins, making it harder to build wealth or take risks. And then there's healthcare. Costs have tripled for families since 2000, outpacing both inflation and wage growth by a wide margin. A single medical emergency can wipe you out, even if you have insurance. High deductibles and surprise bills mean financial ruin is always one accident away. This unholy trinity of housing, healthcare, and higher education traps millennials in a cycle of debt and insecurity, making it nearly impossible to get ahead. Saving, investing, or building a stable life. For many, it feels nearly impossible no matter how hard they work or how much they cut back. The basics have become unaffordable. And that's not an accident, it's by design, the result of decades of policy choices. The system isn't just failing, it's actively working against you, stacking the odds higher every year. And that's why so many feel stuck, frustrated, and unsure if the American dream is even possible anymore. This isn't about blaming boomers, but it's crucial to recognize they benefited from a unique era of prosperity. College in the 1970s? A summer job could cover tuition. Today, that barely buys textbooks. Housing was affordable, thanks to government programs and a booming market. Buying a home then meant riding a wave of appreciation. No genius investing required. Jobs were stable, unions were strong, and pensions were common. Boomers had the wind at their backs: cheap college, affordable homes, rising markets, and job security. Millennials? They're playing on hard mode with half the advantages stripped away. It's not boomers' fault they had it good, but it's vital to see just how good it was. The rules changed and the ladder up got pulled away. Understanding this context is key to fixing what's broken. The game isn't fair, and it hasn't been for decades. The result? A massive wealth gap between generations. Boomers at 67 hold over half the nation's wealth. Millennials at 35 hold just 7%. At the same age, boomers had 3 times the share millennials do now. This isn't about laziness, it's about a system that's changed the rules of wealth building. The gap shows up everywhere. Home ownership, retirement, helping kids with college. Wealth means security and opportunity. Without it, millennials face constant precarity. This isn't a natural outcome, it's the result of decades of policy choices. Tax cuts for the rich, deregulation, weakened unions, and underfunded public services all tilted the game. If you don't own assets, catching up is nearly impossible. The American dream now depends more on who your parents are than how hard you work, and that's a problem for everyone. Millennials didn't just face bad policies, they hit a string of economic disasters. The 2008 financial crisis hit just as they entered the workforce, wiping out jobs and setting careers back years. Many took jobs they were overqualified for, or moved back home, starting adulthood in a hole. Just as things improved, COVID-19 hit, decimating industries and reinforcing instability. Job security vanished. The gig economy exploded, offering flexibility but little stability. The old social contract, loyalty for security, is dead. Millennials have to hustle constantly, but it comes at a cost: burnout, anxiety, and no long-term plans. They've run a gauntlet of crises previous generations never faced. And through it all, they're told to just work harder. The reality: the deck is stacked and the hustle never ends. Let's be clear, millennials aren't broke because of lattes or Netflix. The problem is systemic: stagnant wages, soaring costs, and economic disasters. No amount of budgeting or side hustles can fix a broken system. The myth that thrift will save you shifts blame from policy failures to personal failings. Real solutions require bold, structural change. First, raise the minimum wage to a living wage and tie it to inflation. Millions would be lifted out of poverty, and wages would rise across the board. Second, restore worker power. Unions help workers negotiate for better pay and conditions. Making it easier to join unions would ensure economic gains are shared fairly. The answer isn't to cut back on coffee, It's to demand a system that works for everyone. We need to tackle the big costs head-on, starting with housing. Build more affordable homes, reform zoning laws, and curb corporate speculation in real estate. Housing should be for living, not just for profit. Next, address student debt. Cancel a significant portion and make public colleges affordable again. Expand grants so students can graduate debt-free. Finally, fix the tax system. Shift the burden back to the ultra-rich and big corporations. Tax wealth like income and use the revenue to fund education, healthcare, and infrastructure. This isn't about punishing success, it's about giving everyone a fair shot. These changes would rebuild the middle class and restore opportunity. We know these policies work. They built post-war prosperity. It's time to bring them back. If you're a millennial struggling to get ahead, it's not your fault. You're not lazy or a failure. You're up against a rigged system. The generational blame game is a distraction. The real issue is restoring the advantages that built the middle class. The solutions aren't radical fair wages, worker power, affordable education, accessible housing, and a just tax system. We've seen these policies work before. It will take political will and collective action to demand change. Millennial struggles are a warning sign for everyone. If we don't fix these problems, it only gets worse for the next generation. But we can choose a different future. One that works for the many, not just the few. It's time to fix the system, for good.